we're coming up to the 16th anniversary of the playoff final in 2010. Just
Mhm.
looking back to that now, you talk about obviously, sporting events that could be scripts for a film. Is Blackpool's promotion to the Premier League and everything that happened very much a film script waiting to happen?
I think so, yeah. Still can't believe it to this day. The it still gets shown, doesn't it, on Sky Sports? It's one of the obviously there's many playoff finals with huge drama, but that one seems to get shown more than most for some reason, which is quite nice. Keeps the memory of it alive, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible season, the end of an incredible season, and then to obviously play there on that occasion, to come from behind on a couple of occasions and get over the line. It was emotional. It was chaotic. It was frantic, but it meant everything to the players and the fans. And we had that brilliant connection, didn't we? Where I don't think we were going to be denied. It was just meant to be on that particular day.
Did the scoreline and the way the game went just sum you up as a team? The fact that, you face adversity, but you always just outscored the opposition. It was about scoring more than them.
Yeah, I think so. It was a common theme, a common trend throughout the season. We often fell behind in games. It wasn't planned that way, I can assure you. But we just seemed to we seemed to be behind an awful lot. And when you do it once or twice and it becomes a habit, I think the belief grows because we had goal scorers in the team, we had goal scorers on the bench, we had match winners that could change the outcome of the game. And when you've got that, I think you're always in the game. You're never dead, are you? So from that point of view, I think we always felt we had a real opportunity because of the firepower we had, not only starting on the pitch, but also, from the bench, the finishers as they're called today. So they made a difference throughout the season. Possibly not on that particular day, but you know, certainly the semi-final against Forest at the City Ground. The subs made a difference, and that was a common theme, a common trend, I think, throughout the year, really.
Obviously, you'd been with Blackpool for a long time before that. A lot number of players had been with you, part of the 2007 squad get promotion. At what point would you have not laughed if someone said to you, "You're going to be a Premier League player very soon"?
Yeah, it was a million miles away. We were only ever one league away, really, being a championship team, but we were always trying to consolidate in the championship. I think at that time we came up in 2007. We were still in its infancy of trying to be that established championship team. The first year in the championship, we stayed up on the final day, I think, against Watford in a bizarre game, and then we made slight progress the year after. I remember Swansea away being the final day, winning there, DJ Campbell, and we must have finished around about 15th, I think, if I was to guess. But that was kind of we were gradually making little movements, but there was nothing to suggest that we could get anywhere near the playoffs or the top end of the league going into that season. So it came out of the blue. I think we had the second lowest budget in the championship at the time. Scunthorpe were bottom of the pile in terms of finances. We were second. I think we had a budget of 4.5 million, 4.7 million, something like that. But it was really low. And there was some juggernauts in the league at the time. West Brom were in there, Newcastle were in there, and then obviously all the other, the huge clubs that you see in that league now. I mean, Ipswich were in there at the time, Forest obviously, Cardiff, Leicester were in there, to name a few. So it was a really tough league to get out of, and it still is to this day.
As the season progressed and you got to the back end of the season, you did get on a run. Did it about proving, there's big teams here, but we're more than just plucky little Blackpool.
Yeah, I think we'd been with that mentality for a number of years before that season. A lot of the players, myself included, found ourselves at Blackpool for a reason of kind of where we'd been let go or things hadn't worked at other clubs. Some lads had went for big money to other clubs and kind of took a step back and or a step down into Blackpool. So everybody was there for different reasons. But it kind of brought a team spirit about it and a mentality around it that we wanted to prove people wrong. We wanted to play as high as we possibly could. So there was a real desire, even before that season, coming up from League One into the Championship was tough. Staying in the Championship was tough. So year in, year out, we were trying to overcome these obstacles bit by bit. And I think it's a very powerful characteristic to have, isn't it? That determination to kind of not give in when things are going against you. And certainly that season, the lads showed in abundance that we could do it, and obviously we did.
In the last few weeks, talking to a few people, Charlie said after the game that night, he said just fell asleep straight away because he was like just sort of so tired by it all. Brett was
Mm.
the opposite. He said he was just like he couldn't get to sleep. He was just buzzing and just couldn't put his head down. Where was you
Mm.
and all that? How did you sort of feel after
Yeah,
that?
I was towards Brett. Yeah, we had a we had a great party in the what was the hotel called? Which is in Covent Garden. It'll come to me the name of it, but yeah, beautiful hotel in Covent Garden. All our families were there. My wife, and my eldest. I only had one at the time. He was there, but he was a baby. So we had a great night. It went on late into the evening, I can assure you. We had a really fantastic, memorable evening off the back of it, and yeah, it was exhausting, wasn't it? And I can see where Charlie's coming from. He scored that wonder goal, didn't he? And it was so hot and humid. It was emotional. It was tiring. But yeah, from my point of view, yeah, the night didn't really come to an end. It was such a fantastic occasion, and you didn't want it to come to an end because suddenly you're waking up the next morning and it's gradually moving away and away from you. And now we are 16 years later, and it seems even further and further away now as we speak.
Obviously, last year you got that little taste of what those old times. So what was it like the Legends game and just seeing a few old familiar faces?
Yeah, it's always nice to go back to Bloomfield Road. I always try and go back throughout the regular season a couple of times, take the lads, two boys I have, my wife, and we go up and always get a lovely reception. But it was even more special when you get a lot of the boys that played on that day back and you put your boots on. There's an awful lot of us, I include myself, that are a little bit heavier and certainly a little bit slower than we used to be. But the memories never fade. And yeah, it's football's weird, isn't it? I can only really describe it as like that dressing room camaraderie, especially in good moments and good times. And you don't see players for 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, whatever it may be. But you walk into a dressing room, you see them familiar faces that you shared so much with, and the memories come flooding back, and it's like you've never been away from each other. It's just a weird, special feeling, and that was that on that particular day at Bloomfield Road when we had that game.
Obviously, one of your former teammates, Ian Everts, back at Blackpool. Well, a couple of them, Stephen Craney. Obviously, Dobbs been there for a while. Tom Moore was in last year as well. So, how pleased to see some familiar faces back. And yeah, what do you think of the job Evo's doing from the outside looking in?
Yeah, keep in touch with Evo. Doing a really good job. I think it was tough and challenging for him when he went in. I think you made it quite clear you don't get a job or take a job, or very rarely do you get or take a job when the team's functioning properly and things are going really, really well. There's obviously something quite not right. And I think that was to be the case when Steve Bruce had the team and they were struggling. And Evo went in, and I think it was challenging at the beginning. He had a lot of injuries. I think that was his biggest issue. There was a lack of confidence in the group, and I think it was tough to get it going. To be honest, but towards the end of the season, I think you're seeing a true reflection of the side he would like to put out next season. Competitive, aggressive, high pressing, high energy, and a team that likes to pass and play, but also with a purpose that can get shots off, crosses off, and ultimately score goals. So I think we seen, or the fans seen, hopefully, uh, a snapshot of a look into next season because I think all of the staff, Ian, the staff, the players will look to take that momentum that they created at the end of this season into next year. So I think it's an exciting time to be a Blackpool fan. It's an exciting time to be a player if you're playing there. And certainly if you're Ian Everton, his coaching staff, that's really, really exciting also because I think the ceiling is quite high on what they can achieve next season. I really believe that.
Yeah, obviously you never want to find yourself in, relegation battle or struggling. But obviously to come through that and battle through that and then hit some good form, is that a nice mixture of sort of learning curves for everyone involved last season to take that to their advantage going forward?
Yeah, because the owner, the board of directors, the recruitment staff, the football management team. It will be a reality check. Football is so fragile, isn't it? You know, if you stand still in football, you're going backwards, so they say. So it was a real, frightening look at what can happen if you haven't got a fit for purpose squad, if you haven't got a robust squad, if you haven't quite recruited as well as you possibly could, and you can't keep them players fit and the games come thick and fast, and it's very, very difficult to get off that treadmill of a Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday when you're losing games. Now, to come through that period, build resilience, build character, and I think everybody will just be quite fortunate or thinking they are fortunate that they came through that period in a really positive fashion because, like I say, the players will have learned so much. Ian will have learned so much about his players in that period a management team or a manager or coach will always say you always find out more about those players in difficult times when you're losing games, when the going gets tough, as opposed to when you're constantly winning. So you'll learn an awful lot about his club and the team he's currently managing, and he will not or try not to be in that position again next season. I think that's in the past. I think he'll look to recruit well in the summer. He'll look to put his mark on it, on the way he sees a Blackpool footballer playing and how they want to go about it. He'll want to play a certain way and he'll want to recruit players that can play that way. And I don't think he'll suffer fools in getting that. So if you want to get on the bus or stay on the bus, I think there's certain things that you have to do day in, day out to wear that shirt forever next season in Blackpool FC.
Another teammate from 2010 I want to ask about, someone currently at Everton, Seamus Coleman, obviously leaving as a player. Just, yeah, obviously what a fabulous career, how long he's, been around for, but how much did that sort of loan spell with Blackpool sort of, yeah, give him that sort of spring to do what he's done?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he's had a fabulous career, and I've never ever heard anybody say anything bad about Seamus Coleman, which is a real mark of the man. And the familiar phrase with Seamus is he's a terrific footballer, but he's an even better person, and that's kind of quite regularly heard around Seamus, and I think it's true. I had swapped some texts with him on Friday evening, congratulating him on a fantastic journey, a career that he'd had. It's amazing what he's done at Everton. I think he's the highest Premier League appearance holder for Everton with nearly 400. Forgive me if I'm wrong with that, but I think he's nearing 400 appearances in the Premier League for Everton, which is amazing. And obviously, Blackpool, and we were a small part of his journey. And I think he quite rightly acknowledges that and reflects really, really fondly on his time at Blackpool. And I remember when 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 I used to take him in and he was preparing to leave Everton at that moment. He'd had a foot injury, which he'd been out of action for around 5, 6, 7 months, and it was really frustrating for him. But basically, Blackpool was just an opportunity to go and play some games at a really good level before he was potentially going to leave Everton in that summer. But obviously, the rest is history, isn't it, in terms of the way he performed, the way he conducted himself, the impact he had in games. He was just a brilliant player, had a brilliant time for us, and he definitely helped us. But I'd also like to think we helped him on his journey, and he's quick to acknowledge that. And some of the texts he sent to me on Friday, so that's really nice to hear.
What do you think's next for him? Do you think he'll want to carry on playing or will he go down the coaching route?
Yeah, interesting. Not sure. I never asked him. I didn't feel it was right for me to ask him. He's his own man. He's a proud man, proud Irishman. I think he still wants to make a contribution for the Irish national team. I think he's away in the next week or so, playing a couple of games. So that shows his level of commitment to his country. So I don't know, to be perfectly honest, but if he still feels like he can do it and play and his body's able enough to do it, I think he'll continue somewhere. But then he's also a bright guy. He's a family man. He's done his coaching badges. Maybe that's on the horizon. Maybe either an academy coming into the academy at Everton, or potentially going out and branching out and on his own into a managerial capacity at another club. Who knows? So I think the opportunities are endless for Seamus. I think he'll probably just need a little bit of time over the summer to decide what him and his family want to do next. But everybody at Everton is so proud of him, and we wish him well, whatever he ends up doing. And who knows, he may end up staying in a coaching role at Everton in the first team or in the academy. Who knows? I think it's really open at this moment in time.
Just finally, you might need some thinking time with this, might catch you off guard. He was at Blackpool for a decade. If you was to
Yeah.
put together a Mount Rushmore of Blackpool players who you featured with, who would be the four people you'd select?
I think Charlie would have to be in there. I think he was the best player I played with in my time at Blackpool. Um, you know, we had a really nice blend in midfield. Obviously, Charlie was the goals, the numbers, the assists were so high and eye-catching for him. But what Varney and myself did to help him along his journey, I think again, like Seamus, he will acknowledge that as well. So definitely Charlie. I'll say a little Varney as well because he was a real quality technician, so quiet, so shy, unassuming character, but just a lovely, brilliant little footballer. And obviously went on after his year in the Premier League with us to go and play for Sunderland. He'd played abroad in Spain, played for Wales. He was just a really, really talented player. So there would be two. Probably Evo for the fact that he was on the team sheet with me, or I was on the team sheet with him more than any other player, if that makes sense. So I think we had 7 years together. Started at the bottom of League One when he came on loan from QPR. Obviously, the high of getting promoted, staying in the Championship, then getting promoted again. So we had some amazing times, and Evo was one of the few, certainly one of the only ones, I think, alongside me that went from League One into the Premier League. So he'd be the third one, and probably the fourth one. And it's really hard. I mean, honourable mentions for so many, that League One team that got promoted at Yeovil was jam-packed full of really good players. Mike Jackson, Sean Barker, David Fox, Andy Morrell, Keegan Parker, Gary Taylor Fletcher was a top player, Stephen Craney was a top player. But I think the fourth one would probably be Brett. Um, I just think his personality, he's infectious, his character helped everybody along. At that time, he had a couple of spells at Blackpool, but I think he scored the winning goal at Wembley, scored in all four divisions. I'm not sure you get a bigger Blackpool legend than Brett Ormerod, so they'd probably be before, really. But like I say, there's so many to choose from, it's not easy, but they'd been before, I think.